All right, so as you're graphing these parts of it here, this is kind of what we're looking at. I guess if we're going to keep up with notes, this would be number 5. So the biggest thing really you've got to do with these is that you've got to write the inequality in y equals mx plus b form, your slope intercept, to make it easy to graph. Plot your slope and your intercept, and then from there it's a matter of, and then we talked about this when we're doing interval notation, that for this one we're going to use dashed or solid. In this case, instead of circles, we're talking about lines in this case. So if it's y greater than, y less than, you use a dashed line. If it's greater than, equal to, or less than equal to, you use a solid line. And here's the big thing we're going to do, and this is probably the shortcut that when you were doing this way back, I don't know if anybody told you this or not, but used to, like let's do the first part here on number 1. We've got y is greater than or equal to negative 3x plus 4. Your b value is at 4, so that means we'll start right there. Your slope is negative 3, but again, it's always got to be a fraction, so that would put it over 1. So to get to the next point, we're going to go down 1, 2, 3 over 1 to get to this point. It's got the line underneath it, so when we graph this one, it is a solid line. Okay, now in the old way of doing this one, so that's got the first 3 steps there. The old way of doing this one was the way they always used to tell you, way back when, was that you would pick a point. Let's say, pick some random point out here that was at like 5, 5. And you would take this point 5, 5, you would plug it back in over here. You would work it out, see if it makes the inequality true or not. If the point 5, 5 made it true, you would shade this side. If it made this inequality false, you would shade the other side. And you can do that, which is the old way of doing that. But the easier, faster way is basically this. If it's y greater or y greater than or equal to, you shade up from the line. If it's y less than or less than or equal to, you shade down from the line. So in this case, you've got y is greater than or equal to. So basically, you take your pen, pencil, whatever you've got here, you put it anywhere on the line, and you draw in the up direction. So it lets you know you've got to shade this side of the line. Okay. And some people are like, why didn't they tell us that way back when? Well, it's one of those things where it's not mathematically correct, but it takes the whole point thing of plugging in the point, working out the stuff, and doing all that one. It basically it's a visual way of doing that part of it. And because I remember we were doing this in an Algebra 1 class way back when, and some of the kids, they were doing the homework, and they're like, hey, we noticed that if this thing is y greater, it goes up. If it's y less, then it goes down. They were like, does it always work that way? And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, let's work through this thing and try it and see. And so we took every problem we could find. We checked it every single one in that day. And I was like, okay, y'all found a shortcut, so let's just kind of add this shortcut to it when it comes off this one. So now and again, some people were like, well, how do I know? I'm like, what do we do? Sometimes if it's hard to draw it up or down, like it is, but if you just take the line you have, and again, you just draw straight up from any point on that line, it tells you the direction of what you're going to go for those. All right, so for number 2, so for that one, we've got our b value is at negative 5. So put us there. Our slope in this case is 3/5. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It does have the bar underneath it. So again, another solid line going this way. And because it's y less than, you're going to shade down. Okay. Now, if you happen to do these on Math Excel, the way Math Excel does it is they have a paint bucket that looks something like this. It looks like a paint bucket that's kind of tipped over. Basically, you would click on the paint bucket, and then you would just click anywhere in this area. And once you click on it, it'll fill in everything to this side of the line. So you still graph your line first, and then the paint bucket, either you're going to shade this part or that part, and you just click on the bucket, and it'll kind of put you there. Okay, well, number 3. So we've got what? B value is negative 5. Slope in this case would be -1. But again, you got to make it a fraction, so it's -1 over 1. So we're going to go down 1 over 1 to put it there. There is no bar underneath it, so this time when you draw this line, it is a dashed line. And it's y greater. So then again, if it's greater, that means you're going up. So basically you start here and you shade anywhere in the up direction. So it's going to shade this whole entire part that's here. Okay, and then number 6. Only one letter. So this is kind of good. This is going to take us back a little bit because, again, have to get back in our time machine here. It's only one letter, so we're only going one direction. So it's either vertical or it's horizontal. We just got to figure out which one it is. We're still going to use, if that was y equals -4, you would go to -4 on the y-axis and put a dot there. And again, if it's that letter, you can only hit that axis at that point. So for this one, it's not a vertical line because if you draw vertical, you're hitting every point on the y values. This would have to be one that would have to be a horizontal. Okay, again, it's y greater, so greater's got to go up, so that's going to put us in this direction. Okay, so if you want to, go ahead and do the next two there. If you're using a pen, just, try not to make a mistake. If you're using pencil, if you make a mistake, you can always go back and erase it. But just do those next two to see what you've got, and then we'll see what we've got after that part of it. Yes. Okay, so real quick with number 5. Start at -5. Slope is 2 over 1, so go up 2 over 1. Should be a dash line. Against y greater, so that's going to basically be everything over here to the left side. All right, and with number 6, start at +2. All right, here's the problem. If you go up 7 over 4, somewhere over here, right? Can you plot that point? So that's the one that's kind of a hopefully good review. That's where you can go backwards to get the next point. So instead of going up 7 and over 4, we're going to go the opposite. We're going to go down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 4 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4 to get that point. And that way it should line up with where this point would have been here. Okay. It should be a solid line. Again, it is greater, so that's going to put everything up here. Okay. All right, so for those, again, just make sure, again, if it goes off the paper or off your map that you're doing, if you cannot go up and right, do everything backwards, so go down and then left to get the point that would kind of be there. All right, so if you flip to that next piece of paper we got here, with number 7. All right, again, one variable on number 7, so we only get to go one direction. And again, as long as you memorize one of them, the other one's the other way. If you remember that we're doing the y variable, that was a horizontal line. So if we're doing x, it's going to have to be a vertical line. So if we go to -5, that's going to be a dashed vertical line that's here. Okay, now there is no up down on this one because you cannot shade on top of a vertical line. So this one, it winds up being just left and right. In this case, your arrow is pointed to the left. So that means you got to shade in this direction. So that's going to basically shade everything over here. So that's the only exception that you have for the up down that doesn't work. In this case, though, again, the arrows tell you which way to go. So it's basically like graphing inequality. If we had an open circle at -5 going to the left, it's basically the same thing here. Okay, 8 would be good. Now here's what we want you to do for just for practice on these. On 9, 10, 11, 12. And again, more so that 11's pretty much done. But on 9, 10, 11, what I want you to do before we graph any of these is put these back in y equals mx plus b form before we do any graphing, because we need to make sure that part's good first. So for 9, 10, and 12, go back and write these in y equals mx plus b form. Let's make sure that we got the inequalities correct first. And then once we've got everybody checked and we're all good on the inequality part of it, then we'll go back and graph them. So take a couple of minutes and solve 9, 10, and 12 for solve those for y and tell me what that inequality is going to be, and then we'll actually graph these. Okay, so going back to number 9 here, if we can put this one in y equals mx plus b form, first step would be to subtract 3x from both sides. So I'll leave you with negative 2y less than negative 3x plus 10. Dividing everything by negative 2, we get y. That's going to be a positive 3 over 2x for your slope, and then negative 5 for the intercept. And remember, because you divided by negative 2, we've got to change that from being a less than to being a greater than. Okay, and that was really the only big catch on that one, was just making sure that when you graph this one, that you switch that inequality on that part of it, because it's dividing by a negative. So again, adding, subtracting doesn't bother. It's just when you divide everything by a negative 2, that's when you got to flip that inequality. So for this one, we should start at negative 5. And then go up 1, 2, 3 over 2. Again, dashed line. So even if you had the inequality part of it wrong, your line should have still looked something like this. The only difference is because it's y greater, got to shade everything on this side. Okay, and that's why we were trying to wait for just a minute before you graph these, because I wanted to make sure your inequality was correct before you shaded everything in. All right, number 10, basically the same thing. We're going to subtract 5x from both sides. So we've got negative 3y less than equal to negative 5x minus 15. Dividing everything by negative 3. Same thing, it's going to flip it, but instead of being y less than, it's going to be y greater than equal to 5/3 x plus 5. Ooh, get where you can see that one a little better. There we go. Okay, so if we start at positive 5, again, we're up 5 over 3, so that's here, again, up off the graph on this one. So we got to do everything backwards again. So instead of going up 5, we're going to go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then back to left, 1, 2, 3. So it should put the point there. It is a solid line. And again, this one turned out to be greater, so that is everything over on this side. Okay, and then with number 12, for that one, we subtract x to put that back over here to the left side. We've got negative y greater than negative x plus 2. In that case, we've got to change this sign from negative to positive. But again, if we change this sign, we're going to change all the signs. Because technically we're dividing it by negative 1. But again, by dividing it by negative 1, you change the sign. That's why we're changing this sign also, because we're not only changing the positive negatives, we're also changing our less thans and greater thans. So for that one, we'll start at negative 2. Our slope is 1, so go up 1 over 1. In that case, that would be a dashed line. And you can't see that because I didn't scoot that up. There we go. And again, we changed it to make it y less than, so that should be everything down here. Okay, if you haven't graphed 8 and 11, go ahead and graph those two real quick. We'll check those here in just a minute, and then That'll wrap up the graphing part for the day. Okay, so just real quick on number 8, starting at -4, up 4 over 3, would put us there. Again, it's y less than or equal to, so it is a solid line. And because it's less than, that would be everything down here. Okay, and then number 9, y by 4. Again, if it's y equals, hopefully at this point, everybody's kind of getting in the groove on these. That would be a horizontal line. It's greater, so then that would be just that top part that's up here. Okay, so that's a good review for, going back and rewriting, doing some slope intercept stuff, a little bit of graphing. It's also preview stuff for some inequalities that we'll do coming up in the next month or so. We're having to shade some inequalities with different kinds of functions, but it's still going to be that same thought process when I graph those on the XY coordinate plane.